Welcome back to the Clydesdale Media Podcast. I am Scott Schweitzer. She is Kat Shear, and our special guest is Lucy Campbell, the 16th fittest woman in the world. Lucy, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. So you kind of hit the scene pretty hard this year. Everybody found out who you were real quick. How long have you been doing this CrossFit thing?
So I started, I think 4 years ago now. I was kind of playing hockey after finishing quite a long swimming career. And yeah, thankfully made the choice to step into a CrossFit gym and didn't look back.
Did you say hockey?
Yeah, like hockey was very recreational. It was my most recreational of the sports I did when I was growing up.
Okay.
Field hockey,
And that was
ice hockey.
Field hockey. Okay.
Yeah.
Phew.
Yeah.
It's still a contrast to swimming for sure.
Oh yeah. I wasn't very good, I'll be honest.
So you and I have something very much in common. I swam all the way into college, and
Nice.
I was a distance swimmer as well as you.
Oh, wow. Cool. What, 1500?
So I did the 1,000 and 1,500.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and,
we call it 1650 here.
When I was on the swim team as a child in the summer, I would feign drowning in the middle of the warm-ups because 5 laps was about all I could do in a given day. Yeah. And so when the coach said 20-lap warm-up, I'm like, this ain't happening. I'm a sprinter. So we're like twins, basically.
Yeah. Definitely.
So yeah, here in the States, we actually have meter pools and yard pools. So depending on which one you go to is what you swim. So it was either 1,500 in a yard or 1,650 in a yard, 1,500 in a meter.
1,500. I remember because at the games, I was trying to find out desperately whether it was going to be a 50 meter or 50 yard, because in all of the like publishing it said 50 meter, and I was like, but I know that widthways in an American pool is not 50 meters, which like for me, I'm like, oh great, it's even shorter than I want it to be.
Yeah, it didn't seem to stop you in that event. But yeah, generally the college pools are 25 yards wide and 50 meters long. So you can do both.
They're super
So is
impressive.
that what Madison was?
Yeah. It was like a full setup with the diving pool and everything. Like you don't get many pools like that in the UK. Like that is a super impressive pool. Like, and it just blows my mind. Like the facilities in the States are like next level, because we have a handful of 50 meter pools in the UK. Like it's not very common. It's not very easy to get to in terms of the range that we've got. But the fact that it's like, feels like there's tons of them in the States, it's super impressive.
It's why college and university is so expensive here.
Yeah,
a lot of money flowing through.
To be honest, it's also probably why a lot of like the British swimmers would tend to go to the States for uni or for college, as you guys call it. Like I was quite close to going and then made the choice not to, but it's an incredibly tempting offer, especially if you can get scholarships, because you guys offer so many scholarships. Like
yes, we love our athletes over here.
Yeah,
we do.
This is the crazy thing, Lucy, where I grew up, and it's super small town, no university around. Our recreational pool was a 50-meter Olympic pool and it was just for where the kids came to play. And they did one meet a year.
Oh my God. Yeah. Because like when we were in Madison, we were in Verona, so just outside Madison in terms of where we were staying, and it seems like the middle of nowhere. I have no context of like my geography of the States is not great, but it feels like it's in the middle of nowhere. And there was like an ice rink. There was like 4 baseball pitches, like all on one little section. I was like, this is nuts. Like, given that that's like kind of your average town, and like you'd be lucky in the UK if you get a city that has that kind of facility. Like it's next level.
And yet we're so out of shape as a nation, in general. We have all this sports and recreation type facilities and things, but, the majority of people are not fit versus Europeans, it's crazy.
Well, I mean, I think every country has their own issues, but it's like, yeah, in terms of the facility, like it's nuts that it almost doesn't feel like it gets taken advantage of as much as it could do, I guess.
Right. Yep.
But like, you know, there's a whole psychology around like exercise and then eating behaviors and that kind of thing that like, you know, unfortunately it doesn't mean good facilities doesn't mean high level of activity, because there's too many factors in between those two things. So yeah, as much as it would be great to have more, you know, facilities, it doesn't necessarily mean that the activity level of the population would just go up as a result.
Yeah.
So growing up, you did gymnastics and swimming. Were your parents like, did they push you in that direction for your fitness or to tire you out so it was easier to parent you? How did that go?
So initially, like gymnastics started with like tumble tots. So it's just going as a toddler. I guess it's, you know, you develop coordination, body awareness, spatial awareness to an extent. Even at that level, you're not doing gymnastics, you're just basically having playtime. And then quite quickly, I went through the gymnastics like setup there, but we had a gymnastics club literally right next door to our house, like the next road along, and so it was really convenient. And with the swimming side of things, we live on the river, so our garden backs onto the river, and so it was more of a safety thing initially. Like myself and my sisters all learnt to swim just so that, you know, we could keep ourselves afloat basically if anything happened and we fell into the water. And all of us kind of progressed through the swimming club to an extent. So like my sisters both went to Scottish nationals because my dad is Scottish, so we can go to both. And then I went through to a bit of a higher level than that. But yeah, it's just kind of the whole family was involved with swimming in particular.
And do you just have sisters?
Yeah, 2 older sisters. I'm the youngest.
The baby of the family. So I want to, it kind of goes back to our, like the facilities thing and all that. Sam Briggs, legend in the UK, CrossFit Games champion. I've read where you looked up to her a lot when you were younger. Why was there such a large gap between her and you for UK female CrossFitters?
I have no idea. So firstly, I think with all of these things, I know that I am the second British female to qualify, and I just want to make sure that it's like in the old format. Obviously, we had our national champions, and Meg Lovegrove should have gone to the games the year that it was at national champions year. And I always feel a little bit bad that kind of gets overlooked, especially because like I am now with Red Pill and Meg is with Red Pill. So I just want to like make sure that she gets the credit for that, you know, had everything gone right in COVID year, she would have qualified and she would have been there. But I think with the individual side, with the old kind of regionals format, it's really hard to say. Like for me, honestly, I wasn't even involved really in CrossFit at that time. Like my first CrossFit year was the last regionals year. And so for me, I feel like I've almost just had blinders on the whole time, or blinkers on the whole time, like a horse. Like I've just been doing CrossFit because I like doing CrossFit, and I wasn't really thinking about what other people were doing. But like, honestly, if we're looking at like, you know, at the regionals format, it's probably just got something to do with the standard of the European athletes. The European women are like, you know, there's a reason that most of them are in the top 20 at the games, and it's just ridiculous. Like we pretty much had a European woman on the podium for I don't even know how long. Like I'm sure someone can do the stats on that like the reputation with the Icelandic girls, with, you know, Kristen Holter and the Norwegian girls that are coming out because of that, standard to get into that top 5 at the regionals is so hard, that I don't think it's necessarily saying anything about the British women. It's more saying something about the standard of the European women.
Okay. I just was trying to get from you, are there a lot of CrossFit boxes in the UK?
It's definitely growing. There are kind of more popping up every so often, I feel. By no means is it necessarily at the level that it is like in the States, because like timeline wise, I think we're quite far behind, but it definitely is getting there. And there are certainly, like, we had quite a few British women at the semis. So I do think that we'll start to kind of see our group on a whole become a little bit more competitive over the next few years. Because like we had Taylor Howe in the last chance qualifiers this year. You know, there was like Amy Kringle, Aoife Burke, Meg, Saf Goddard. Like there was quite a few, Hannah Phipson, quite a few British women at the semis. But yeah, I just think sometimes it like takes that time and takes that exposure at that level to kind of realize what you have to do to step up. And I literally think it will just be a matter of time before we will start seeing more Brits at the games.
So for you, I also read that when you first walked into a CrossFit box, it was like it fit like a glove. Like that was what you were meant to do when you walked in. What was it about that experience that you knew this is where I need to be?
It was just like, I think I loved walking in there, and you know, everyone looked different. You didn't have a certain like one type of body shape that was the same across the board. It was, the day that I went was on a team workout as well. So like, it was quite nice to be part of a group. And it, like, that was one of the things that I loved about hockey. Like I was, even though I wasn't great, I was training with people all the time. And when you compare that to swimming, which is kind of, you're training as a group a lot, but like it feels very, you know, solitary, as you know. So I think I liked that kind of element of the session that we did. But also like, even in that session, I started to pick things up quite quickly. You know, I had wall balls in, and I'd done kind of wall balls before, but never with like a proper target. And so just kind of getting the coordination of getting the wall ball to the target every time and making sure that like I throw it hard enough that it actually hits the target. And like I got my first handstand push up in that session, and there was an assault bike in it. And so there was all these like different things that I was just like, I knew that I wasn't good at it yet, but I knew that it would be the kind of thing that would hook me in, that I would want to get good at. So yeah, I think it was definitely like the variety of the session that I was like, this is 100% a bit of me.
Was there anything to the fact that men and women were in the same box and it was okay for females to be strong?
Yeah, I mean, I do think I've always kind of loved that side of things. That there's not many sports, I feel, where it feels like that, or at least I hadn't come from a sport that felt like that. Like gymnastics, you are, you know, powerful in that, but it's not, you're not weightlifting, or I wasn't weightlifting anyway, because I stopped when I was 12. So, and then with swimming, I always felt like as a distance swimmer, I didn't really fit in, because it felt like they wanted me to be skinny, and I wasn't naturally a skinny person. I was quite, I wasn't necessarily muscly, but I was quite strong for a distance swimmer, I guess. Like when I was at Loughborough, I was lifting the same kind of weights, or capable of lifting the same kind of weights as the sprinters were. But obviously I'm not a sprinter, so I don't need to be lifting that load. But then if I did want to be a sprinter, I was just too fit to be a sprinter. So I just felt like I didn't really fit in because they were basically telling me to be skinnier, and I naturally didn't really sit that way. And so I just kind of liked the fact that with CrossFit, that's a huge part of it. Like, it's, you know, I still don't necessarily think that there is a one body type at the elite level that, you know, is an elite CrossFitter. Like, if you look at the top 40, or even if you look at that podium, like Mal versus Laura, those are two different, like, you know, Mal's fairly short, Laura's quite tall. There's quite a, you know, a variety at the games. And I think I kind of like that you find what works for you and you have to maximize that.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, I can associate with that because I think I was the only distance swimmer on my team that was under 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
Because generally you're very tall and skinny, and that was not me. But I didn't have enough quick twitch to be a sprinter.
No. And that's the thing, like that's only really in the pool. When you then go across to open water, which I did towards, I guess from when I was like 14 to when I went to uni, it's a little bit more mixed, to be honest. For a while, you had some of the American girls that were quite slim, but then like the Olympic champion in 2012 was a woman called Eva Ristov from Hungary, and she was not slim. Like, she was not that, you know, she was big, but she looked more muscly, and she looked like a slightly bigger frame. And then similar, like now we've got some Brazilians. There's one called Ana Cunha. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. I'm probably murdering it because it will, you know, have a Portuguese accent. But like those body shapes are really different, and in open water you see much more of a range. So I think it is interesting that, like, even though I was doing open water, I kept getting told to be slimmer, and it was just like, now that I'm out of it, I'm very pleased to be out of it. But at the time, you know, you just try and do what you're told. So also.
So let's talk about CrossFit now. And you made it to semifinals last year, where you finished 9th.
Yeah.
Did that give you the taste you needed to up your game for this season?
Yeah, I definitely think, I mean, I knew going into those semi-finals what I needed to work on. And unfortunately that came up. So, you know, that's the risk you take with CrossFit, is that there's always going to be something. Hopefully not at some point, but, you know, and so that for me was the legless rope climb workout. And it was just quite a high volume of legless rope climbs to what I had the capacity for. And so I really, really had to manage that. And I didn't finish a workout. And then in the run up to the semis this year, I redid it and I finished a workout well within the time cap. And so it's something like, when you put a time to it, it's probably like a 6-minute improvement on that event. And so it definitely, it gave me the confidence in some events that I was like, okay, these are good enough. Like, this is where it needs to be. And it definitely kind of confirmed what I knew already about the things that I needed to work on, but it just gave me more time to then be able to work on it.
So this year, when legless was announced as one of the events that was going to be at every semifinal, were you more confident this year because you had worked on that in the off season?
I would say I was more confident than I would have been had it come up last year, but I was not so confident that it would be where it needed to be for me to not be out of the runnings, if that makes sense. Like I was very much aware that it could still be a weakness. I wasn't really sure how that event was going to go.
So this year, you talk about the stacked European semis, and you're in a battle with Sarah Sigmundsdottir to the end for that last spot to go to the games. What is that like when someone who's been in the sport for so long and is kind of a legend, and you are fighting for that final spot?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, it was hard. I think it was more hard because I know, she is a fan favorite. I'm comparatively the newbie, or I very much am the newbie. And so I knew that, me achieving my goal and getting, the dream outcome of getting to the games would mean kind of ending that for someone else, and her having that, dream comeback year after the ACL injury and everything like that. And so it wasn't the nicest position to be in, but like in that situation, you can't sacrifice your own performance just to give someone else a dream outcome. And so I kind of knew that I had to make sure that it was 100%, like, forget who it is. As far as I was concerned in that situation, like, Sarah was athlete X. It doesn't matter who it was. It just had to be 100% focus on what I had to do to, solidify my place in that position. So yeah, it was a bit strange, especially because then also I made the mistake of kind of reading a YouTube comment on one of the videos, and it was like, oh, the games, like, it feels really weird without Katrin and Sarah there. And I was like, all right, like, sorry, but at some point, we need to
we got to move on.
There will be new athletes coming through. And I think, yeah, not that Sarah's never going to get back to the games, and not that Katrin's never going to get back to the games, but like, you kind of want new athletes to come through in the sport, because at some point, like, that shows that the sport is progressing. And sure. And so it was a very strange situation to be in. But I also think that, like, as I say, if the new athletes don't come in, the sport doesn't really progress, I guess.
Yeah, and it's not personal, it's business. I mean, this is your livelihood, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we talk to a lot of athletes, and a lot of athletes have a very good tunnel vision where they just focus on themselves. You seem to truly be a fan of the sport. Like, everybody, their stories, and that's really kind of refreshing to hear. Did you watch a lot of stuff before you did it yourself?
Yeah, I think me being I'm not that I don't love CrossFit, but I'm less of a fan now that I'm an athlete. And like, I read up on people less now that I'm an athlete than I did when I was pre, a semis qualifier and everything like that. Like, I think, honestly, like, the athletes like Sarah, for instance, like Cara Saunders and all of them, they got me into the sport. And so that's probably why I know, like, bits about them. But now that I'm an athlete, I've kind of had to take that step back and, like, as you say, it's not personal, it's business, but I've unfollowed some of them on Instagram because, like, they are now competitors, and I don't need to be stressing about the fact that they're repping out at my 1 rep max and stuff like that. Like, it's not, something that is conducive to what I'm trying to do. And so I definitely would say that kind of knowledge, I guess, and fan side of it has shifted for me in the last year or so, kind of recognizing that my role within the CrossFit world has changed as well.
Yeah, and I think the media, has grown with the sport as well. And so probably when you were coming up in the sport, prior to you making semis and things like that, there's a lot of content out there to be had versus, people coming up in 2014, 2015, there was less coverage. There wasn't, all of these news outlets, and nobody had their own vlogs and all that. So I think it was more accessible to you, which is interesting. But curious about that, you shutting off Instagram and things like that. Was that something you did on your own, or were you working with someone like a coach or a mindset coach that sort of gave you that recommendation?
No, I mean, I definitely, that was kind of my own accord, but it was probably based on like conversations that I'd had with my coach and things like that, or my manager, or general like friends and family. Just sometimes trying to recognize the effect that had on me. It was more, it was just stressful things of like I say, watching someone rep at my PB and that kind of thing, because everyone blooming posts their lifts, don't they? They love a lift, like, because it looks good on Instagram, but I'm not the best at lifting, and so for me that's really stressful, and I don't need to see that. Like, no one's gonna film their full 5k run and show that on the Instagram, because it would just look boring. But those are the kind of things that I'm better at, coming from swimming, coming from an endurance background. The things that I'm good at are not Insta worthy. So I think that's the thing. Like, for me, it was noticing that the things that people tend to post on Instagram are my weaknesses, essentially. And so I think that was the thing that I was like, this is not helpful for me. Just trying to like recognize that the way that it was making me feel was not something that is beneficial for my performance. And that was the thing that then caused me to either mute them or just unfollow.
Yeah.
So that brings up an interesting question, because as a professional CrossFit athlete, the way you make money generally is through sponsorships and being an influencer on social media. So now you have to tightrope this fine line of, how do I make money for myself? And you just said, like, the stuff you're good at isn't really IG worthy.
Yeah.
And so how do you make the posts you need to make and do all the stuff you need to do to make money with the sponsors and still be in the right headspace to be a great athlete?
So I try and be as like real as I can on Instagram. And it's not me saying that other people aren't being real, but like, the stuff that I post tends to be very much what I'm doing in training. Like, it's not just going to be PBs. If it's PBs, then that's great. But also I'm going to keep those things to myself. But if, like, you'll see a bit of me doing gymnastics, you'll see a bit of me doing lifting, you might see a bit of me sitting on an erg. And so I try to make it as real to the day-to-day things that I'm doing as possible, but also like, I'm quite open on Instagram. I have a sports psychology degree, a sports psychology master's. So I like thinking about the kind of mindset stuff. And so I'm quite keen to kind of not necessarily use that for like growth in terms of helping followers and things like that. But like, I will be very honest with the things that I'm struggling with in training, or the things that are going really well in training. And I think that for me is just, I hope it's quite refreshing for people, because I think a lot of kind of the top CrossFitters, especially, it tends to be that you see less and less of their training and more of sponsored Instagram posts. And although we do have to do those sponsored posts to keep our sponsors happy, I think I don't want my Instagram to become just a feed of sponsored posts, because I don't love following that, and I don't think that's fun to follow. And I don't think it's useful to anyone either, not to have that constantly. So I'm quite cautious of like trying to, keep sponsors happy and satisfy that, but also give people something that they want to follow. And, we all love a story, and I think people follow you for your story. So yeah, I think that's kind of how I try and manage it.
The more you talk, the more I just want to take my notes and just chuck them out the window.
I know, right?
Because you keep opening all these cool opportunities. So confirming, you have a master's in sports psychology.
Yeah.
How old are you, Lucy?
You are
26.
Okay.
You are currently at Red Pill as your coaching. Okay. That is the perfect place for you. So we work with Phil Mansfield.
I've been listening.
We love
Phil. On the mindset piece. So how often do you get the chance to talk to him and just go down all these theories? Because he blows me away. He never has a note. He never has any espouses these theories, and it's just, I'm in awe every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Phil isn't actually my coach. I'm with Cyril, who is, I think, officially the head coach, even though Phil is the owner. So I don't talk a huge amount to Phil, although he was in Mexico on our games prep, because he coaches my training partner, Kelly, who I was training a lot with coming up to the games. She's in the masters category. And so there definitely is a bit more kind of psychology chat, especially because, I mean, I was quite honest with it on Instagram. As I obviously said, I tried to be about what happened in the back 9 event. I've been suffering with a bit of a kind of mental block on my cleans, and it basically all played out on the comp floor, which is like the worst thing in my head that could have happened to me. It was like my absolute biggest fear going into the event. But Phil was trying to work quite a lot with me in Mexico on kind of dealing with that. And I'll be honest, it didn't feel like I had enough time in the run up to the games to be able to deal with it properly. But it's those kind of things like, we've got a training camp coming up. We're going out on Monday. And so those are the occasions that I definitely try and pull him to one side and honestly more ask him for my own benefit, in terms of what do I need to do now? Because although I guess I've got the learning side of things, I've done the paperwork. I've done the paperwork, I guess. But I have never been good at the practical side of things with sports psychology. And so even though I'm really interested in talking about, exercise behaviors and the psychology of exercise and all the funky little things that we do as athletes to deal with the reality of being an athlete, like fear of failure and everything like that, and fear of success, sometimes I'm not good at applying that to myself. And so that's where kind of Phil and Cyril comes in. But Phil has, obviously, as you know, a bit more of a background with psychology than Cyril does. So it tends to kind of be a three-way partnership on that, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting too that you talk about the difference between sort of the theory and the application, right?
Yeah.
Like you can study it in a book and you can know it backwards and forwards, but when you have to apply it, especially to yourself, right? It's challenging. It's one thing to, take on other people to sort of help analyze and assess, but to do it for someone else, for yourself is quite another thing.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that with the way that we do sports psychology in the UK is that your master's gets you your BPS stage 1, which is your British Psychological Society stage 1 qualification. And then you essentially have to do a almost equivalent to a doctorate to then be able to get your stage 2. And the stage 2 is basically more about going out then and working with athletes. So I never did that, and I haven't done that. I might do that someday down the line when I finish with CrossFit, but I think that's obviously the bit that I've missed out on. So that practical side of thing is actually really
like the
where
next
I lack,
step.
I guess. Yeah.
So you've also done some coaching yourself in a CrossFit box. Do you see yourself someday being like a Phil, where you take your degree and your experience and put it together to be an elite coach?
I've never really thought about it, to be honest. There's a lot of things that I would want to do before I properly start coaching. And to be honest, it's one of the reasons why, like, I don't think I would go into the online coaching kind of scene just yet, especially because I think I could do it for swimming. And there might be a few things kind of in the pipeline, definitely in my head, mental pipeline, to kind of bring out some kind of swimming program. But in terms of CrossFit specifically, like, I feel like I don't know enough that I would feel happy to be able to do that at this point in time, especially when I look at the level of service and the level of knowledge that the guys at Red Pill have. Like, I would want to, I think, go through the Red Pill mentorship before I start thinking about any of that sort of stuff.
Well, it's cool that they have that, right? And
Yeah.
it's something you're young enough, you don't have to think about it today, right? But knowing it's out there and that your background would allow that, that's like a cool opportunity.
Yeah, definitely.
So, all right, let's bring it back to CrossFit a little bit. I read that going into your rookie year at the games, you didn't want to put a target anywhere. You just wanted to go kind of experience it. Did you have a good experience this year at the games?
On the whole, yes. Firstly, I would say that although I wanted to go and experience it, I wasn't just there to have a good time. So I did have, like, I wanted to do well.
You did win some events, so
yeah,
you definitely weren't there just to have a good time.
Check.
Yeah.
Got it.
So I would say that the experience on the whole was really good and honestly, like, invaluable for hopefully the rest of my career, in that, like, you literally cannot tell what is going to happen until you get there. Like, you don't know what it feels like. You don't know what happens behind the scenes and all of the, stress of the briefings and everything like that. You just have no idea of that side of things until you're there and until you've experienced it the first time. And so this year, going into next year, fingers crossed I qualify again next year, I know that I have learned a huge amount in terms of that side of it. And so I think that those experiences, like, yes, on the whole, it was great, but there were some things that I know I could have done better. Even though, like, as I say, with it being rookie year, there's so much that you can't plan for. There's so much that you actually just have to learn when you are there on the comp floor. But that doesn't mean that I am 100% pleased with my performance necessarily.
So let me ask you this. In swimming, how many times did you swim the perfect race?
Oh, maybe twice.
Yeah, I think it's because I would say probably the same. And 2 might be giving it a little bit much for me, but
yeah.
And then to go to an event like the CrossFit Games that is so widespread and everybody, like, I could have done better on some things. Well, yeah, because I don't think anybody's going to have a perfect CrossFit Games.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think the thing that I was, I guess, a little bit disappointed with was, like, the polarity of my results. Like, I won 2 events. That's super exciting and almost unbelievable that I won that second one. But I also came really close to the bottom on quite a few. And that's just, you cannot have that. Like, you just can't. And some of them were silly mistakes. Some of them I'm annoyed with myself that I didn't think on my feet better. try things differently and back myself to try things differently. But that's the thing, like those are the things. Turns out I suck at skipping. I could have told you that before, to be fair. I was rubbish at single unders before I went to the games, and I didn't need the games to show me that I'm still rubbish at single unders, but it did. And so I was doing the like 2 foot together single under, like the really quick skips. And behind the scenes, they'd obviously said that we could do the running skips as well. And behind the scenes, I tried the running skips and tripped, whereas my other ones were going surprisingly well. And so I was like, right, that's the way that I'm going to do it when I got onto the comp floor. Anyway, I must have tripped about 4 times. And in my head, like now looking back at it, obviously, I'm like, you did the same thing over and over and tripped 4 times. I should have, at that point, I literally had nothing to lose. I should have tried the running skip, and I didn't. And now looking back at it, I'm annoyed that I didn't figure that out quicker. But, it's the heat of the moment. And sometimes you don't make smart decisions, even though on the whole, I like to think that I usually make good decisions on the comp floor. That was one of the times that I absolutely did not.
Yeah. Well, it was a one or the other and not a both in your head, right?
Yeah.
You were thinking, I'm going to do one or the other. This is what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. So that's understandable. Any big surprises for you for the weekend in terms of experiences, whether it be performance, interactions with people, fans?
Honestly, I think I'm more surprised that I wasn't super intimidated by the people that I was around. Like I've got this picture, and it's from I can't remember, up and over event with the ring muscle ups and the like box jump over and the log jump over and that kind of thing. And I'm in the end lane, but I'm in the end lane next to Cara Saunders, Amanda Barnhart, and Thuri Helgadottir. And that to me is like, those are proper games veterans. Like they've been so many times that I can't believe that in that moment, in that week, that felt so normal. And I think I was kind of expecting to be a little bit more daunted by that, just because I remember like in the times in swimming where I was in a heat with like Becky Adlington in the middle lane, so Olympic champion, I was super intimidated and like kind of one of those situations where like if you were in line with them, I'd back off because I'd be like, oh God, I'm going way too quick. And to be honest, I definitely was going too fast if I was in line with Becky Adlington. But like it's having that mentality of being like, no, I deserve to be next to them, and I deserve to, put my name in the ring with all of these really good games veterans. I think that's the thing that I was more surprised by during the event, that like I wasn't really fazed by it.
Surprised and maybe proud of yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I think it shows to myself like a lot of growth in that sense, that like even though it still feels weird that people are starting to know who I am in CrossFit, it's like I deserve to be there, and I can recognize that I deserve to be there. And yeah, that I'm proud of myself for, that there's like that kind of personal growth there, I guess.
Yeah.
So you had your 2 worst finishes the end of day 1.
Oh yeah.
Back to back. From a psychology standpoint, how do you put that behind you so that on Thursday you're ready to take on shuttle to overhead and get rid of that?
I think I just knew that like there was still, the weekend was barely started yet. Like we call it a weekend, it's a week, it's a long time.
Sure.
And we'd barely started. We were 3 events in, 10 events hopefully to go. And in my head, I wasn't even thinking about the cuts, like, because there is absolutely no point in stressing about that until you really need to. And I didn't see myself as needing to at that point. And so it was just kind of, I guess, reframing, not reframing, but really focusing on the opportunities that were in the rest of the event, that you can't change anything that's happened. I knew that I was rubbish at dips. I need to get better at dips. So I will get better at dips. And that's why Elizabeth was so bad. And what are you going to do? I suck at single unders. Like, there's nothing that I can do about that at the time. I am now better at single unders, so there is improvement. But like, there's just no point in kind of, focusing on that too much, because it's not going to benefit the rest of the weekend. And me kind of beating myself up is not going to put me in a good headspace for what hopefully will be better events. And we didn't know either, like, we didn't know what most of the other events were going to be. And so, yeah, it's just like, if I carried that with me, I think it would have not done me good for the rest of it.
Yeah, the good news is you knew it wouldn't be single unders and it wouldn't be dips again, probably. Chances are. So
exactly. Although this is the thing that, I was so annoyed about the skill medley, largely because I'm really good at handstand walking. I can do that ramp easily. I can do, like, the pistols would have been completely fine. I could do the pirouette completely fine. I know that I at least would have got to the top of the legless pegboard. And those are the things that I missed that opportunity to show that I can do those things and to show that I'm good at those things. And so that one did, I maybe held on to that one for longer than I should have done. But I think in that, I just saw the missed opportunities, and I was like, well, I've messed it up now, because handstand walks aren't going to come up again, and pistols aren't going to come up again. And actually, again, like, that took me having that rant to my coach to be like, okay, right, we'll move on from that now.
Yeah, when you bounce back well, because shuttle to overhead, many of the people finished high in one, low in the other, or vice versa. And you had I think it's a 7th and a 14th. So top 15 in both, not too shabby. And that was kind of a nice bounce back before you got into Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like, our plan was to try and push the run. And I knew that kind of scares me a bit, because I'm like, oh God, what if I try and push the run and I'm still not near the front of the run? Just that, like, that mental, how does that play with your head when you're trying to push something and actually you're still not maybe where you need to be on it? Like, thankfully for me, well, two things. My coach was like, that's you comparing yourself to other people as to how you kind of dictate how well that event is going. And he obviously was completely right. And the second thing was that, like, luckily for me, it did go okay, that run, like, I pushed the run and I was near the front in the run. And also, like, of the lifts, my jerk is probably one of my better lifts. Like, jerks and snatches, the overhead movements, I like them. And so I was almost happier to take that risk and push that, knowing that actually I wouldn't be at risk of, like, failing loads and loads of jerks. I'm usually pretty consistent with my jerks. So I think that was the thing that made me kind of confident to take that risk. And, like, thankfully, because it gave me a little bit more time on the barbell, even though I wasn't, repping out some of the jerks like the other girls were, it was ultimately the time on that kind of allowed me to get an okay score. So yeah, it was a solid outcome overall.
Well, so what did you learn about yourself at this year's games?
Oh, that's a deep question. I think I'm really pleased with the way that I turned around the last two events on the Sunday. So the experience on the back nine, where it was like hands down my lowest point of the games, to then be able to come out for Jackie and be able to do what I did there, like, I knew that I could be tough, but I didn't know how kind of strong mentally I could be necessarily until, like, you know, you get put in that position and you don't have a choice. And even had I not won Jackie Pro, that would have been a really positive outcome for me, that I was able to go into it and not still be thinking about the last event, even though that was as bad as it could have gone. And I think, what else did I learn about myself? Honestly, I think it's just given me a little bit more, I guess, confidence in a way that it's like even though there are things that really didn't go well, the things that went really right. And it's just knowing that, you know, as long as I can keep working on the weakness and bring the average up, that position, like I'm 16th at the moment, but actually there was quite a few places that were quite tight on the points. Not that I was paying attention to it at the time, but it's good to know that it feels like there's some really easy wins that I can do to get better. And that's what excites me so much for next year, because, you know, if I don't have 2 near last place finishes, 3 near last place finishes, like, those are the things that they do count big time on this. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, I'll win another 2 events next year, but hopefully there'll be another swim and I'd like to throw my name in the hat for that one. But it's those kind of things that I guess I didn't realize how good I could be at some of those things. Like, I had no idea that I would do that on Jackie Pro. And yeah, blows my mind.
Have you done all the math problems, like the what ifs, you know,
No,
based on those
that doesn't
finishes
help
or anything
me.
like that? No. Okay.
I think I would just end up kicking myself even more, and like, I can't go back and change it. I know that they
Sure.
need to get better. I don't know how much. I don't need to know how much they need to get better by, you know, especially because CrossFit is so varied. Like, next year could be a completely different games. I don't think we were expecting half of the curveballs that we got this year. I certainly thought that after, like, the legless pegboards and the, you know, pike up to handstand or tuck up to handstand, that, like, that would be it for the new moves ticked off. And then they came out with the parallettes, and then they came out with, you know, the wall facing handstand push-ups, and it just kept feeling like there was another new movement that they were throwing at us, to the point where I kind of threw a hissy fit at my coach after one of the events, and I was like, what is happening? But yeah,
it may change the face of games prep for the rest of time.
Oh my
yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Gosh, I have so many different ways I could go with this, and we only have like 7 minutes left.
I know. We got to talk about Rogue.
She's not going to Rogue.
Oh, you're not going to Rogue?
No, I have a bit of a wrist niggle that needs resting.
Okay.
And so it's not the smart choice.
You could have gone to Rogue if you wanted to.
I could have gone. It's honestly, like, I had no idea about the format of it in terms of what they do to support the athletes that are going.
It's quite amazing.
That is a game changer. That is honestly incredible. And like, with swimming, because I was on the national team, you know, I completely took for granted the fact that all of that's lottery funded. So we don't pay for any of the flights, accommodation, or anything like that when you're traveling with the GB team. And so the cost of the games was quite eye-watering. And so the fact that Rogue does what it does to help athletes get there, and support athletes when they're there, that is incredible. Like, 100% hats off to them. There needs to be more comps like that, because it is, like, I think people don't realize, especially if you're not in the States, like, just how expensive it is to get there. It is. Rogue are doing it right.
And the fact that every athlete gets prize money.
Yeah.
They pay all the
and
way to 20th,
amount.
and there's only 20 athletes. And and this is the first year I'm not going to be there, which just kills me inside. But they just, the way the athletes are treated while they're there is first class. It's in my opinion, the premier event of the off season.
Who owes you big time for not doing this?
Oh, I don't know. Honestly, I'm trying not to think about it too much because I'm already getting FOMO.
There are a couple of female athletes that owe you big time, is all I'm saying, right? Somebody took your place.
Yeah.
And they're getting the
opportunity. It is what it is. Hopefully, like, making the smart choice now means that I'll be able to put in a performance next year that warrants an invite, and that's the goal ultimately. Like, I
absolutely
hopefully be here a while, so I'm hoping it's not going to be the only invite.
Yeah. Do you have all your off-season stuff kind of on hold right now, just based on how you're feeling and what's going on with your training?
No, I'm still planning on doing Wodapalooza, but that's the only one really that I've spoken to with my coach about. It just, like, I feel like I'm one of the few athletes that's really disappointed that it's only 2 days as an individual this year, because it's a long way to fly for a 2-day event.
Yeah. Well, you can always hop on a team and compete throughout the weekend. Just find another gal pal.
I just hate the worm. I'll be honest. Don't like the worm. So
I will tell you, you're not the only athlete. We put out a poll, and every CrossFit athlete hates or said no, they did not like the new format.
The new format, yeah.
Yeah.
Only fans voted yes, they liked it.
Really? Well, I guess that's probably because they're more likely to get the individuals jumping on a team, and so you see it all, I guess. But yeah, from an individual perspective, it's like Wodapalooza is one of the big events, and don't get me wrong, I loved it last year, and I'm sure I will, fingers crossed, love it again this year. It's just that, like, I really prefer a longer event. The 4-day format for me, it was great. And I think with the volume of training that we do as well, I like feeling good when everyone else feels tired. So, yeah.
Right. Like, give me one more event. Give me.
Yeah.
That's great.
It also gives you a run through of eating during a competition, resting during a competition. It gives you like a walkthrough of that. When it's only 2 days, you really don't get that then.
No, exactly. And to be honest, I think that looking back on the games, like, there are some things there that I didn't get right. Like, my nutrition was not well planned, and I didn't get those things right. And so it's like, you look for these opportunities to kind of test those boundaries of, like, how soon before an event can I afford to eat before I start feeling sick during the event, and that kind of thing. But yeah, 2-day event it doesn't provide those same kind of challenges as an athlete, I guess.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Nutrition is tough too, because it's not just, it's not one size fits all for everybody. No. And even you could have the same athlete, same weight, same type of athlete, an endurance athlete like yourself, and you could feed them the same way, and it's just going to affect them differently because of your chemistry and everything else. So it's hard to coach that as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, you've got to practice.
So my last question for you is, with the way you came on the scene, 2 event wins, all of that, your exposure has gone way up. Like, I have seen you everywhere since the games. How has that changed your life in trying to schedule everything and keep your goals and priorities set?
I think for me, it's honestly not been that difficult. I will also add, and frustratingly, people keep getting my name wrong. And, like, I've spoken to Sean Woodland about it because it happened at Wodapalooza. I got called, like, Ellie Turner. I got called Emma McQuaid. I think I got called Emma Tall as well at one point. And that was, like, to be fair, I was full on stranger at that point. Like, no one knew who I was at Wodapalooza. But then Boz was on the Talking Elite Fitness podcast and credited Cara Saunders with the Jackie Pro event win. And so I, like, put up a bit of a kind of jovial reel, just being like, hello, I won that event, please.
Good for you.
But I think with things like that, it's like, and I've not really known how to approach it, I guess, because I don't want to, you know, be seen to be overly criticizing things, but those kind of experiences are what helps us with exposure as athletes. And like, if my following goes up massively, it helps me with getting more sponsors and things like that, because I'm more favorable to sponsors, even though in my head, like, I would love for it to be solely based on performance. That's not the reality of the social media world that we live in.
Right. It's not a merit-based system necessarily.
Not entirely, no. Yeah. But I am very lucky that, like, I work with a PR company, I have a manager, and that they are the reason that you've been seeing me. Like, I have not done that. I've not been the one that's like flogging my name out there and trying to get coverage. So for me, like, they make my job easier because I don't have to worry about any of that. Like, I am very much, I do my training, I post what I'm told to post and hopefully get it right. And that's the extent of like what I have to do. In terms of the rest of the stuff, in terms of, you know, obviously you guys contacted me to get on this, I just send it straight away to Saskia at the PR company, and they worry about the scheduling and everything like that. And that just really helps me out, because I'm useless at this kind of stuff. Like, I suck at replying to messages. Like, the only people that I'm consistent with replying to are like my manager and my coach, and everyone else I'm like, I'm really sorry, it's taken me 5 days to reply to this. So if it was just down to me, I wouldn't be doing anything, because I'd just be so useless at like scheduling myself that no one would see my face anywhere. But yeah, all of that stuff is 100% credit to them.
And in all fairness, we did reach out to you before the games, but you were in training mode, and we wanted to respect that. And so we knew who you were before the games.
Yes.
So, all right, I noted. But also, we just got, you know, there's more to talk about after the games anyway, isn't there? So
Sure.
It's better content.
And I didn't even touch our notes.
Yeah,
which is awesome. That's when I love the podcast.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to have you on again.
I'll come again. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Lucy, thank you so much for jumping on. You are one fascinating individual, and I'm so glad you took some time out with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been fun.